Here we go. All right, so we started talking about this yesterday. This is one of the most interweaving little storylines ever. All right, so make sure you're following along with what I'm talking about. I know I kind of went over this yesterday, but it's not going to hurt you to not finish your Latin homework right now. Don't do that. All right, be taking notes on this. All right, this is pretty complex. So it starts with these two guys. I told you about them yesterday, the Iasion and Dardanus brothers. All right, so these were two guys who were sons of Zeus, and they lived in a place called Samothrace that I talked to you all about yesterday. And that was right in the waters between the northern country of Thrace and then the eastern shore of what back then was called Phrygia. And there was a wedding going on. It was the wedding of Cadmus. And the reason why I'm bringing this guy up right here is because at the very end of today, I'm going to start talking to you guys about a different cursed house. All right, so this guy's house, Cadmus's cursed house, was what kingdom, Elijah? What kingdom was this guy's kingdom?
What does it start with?
A T. Cadmus's, what? No, we're near Thrace, but Cadmus's cursed house was in...
Troy.
No, not Troy. Troy doesn't exist yet. We talked about it for a really, really long time, but it doesn't really get a lot of historical feedback. It's Thebes. Yeah, Thebes. The cursed house of Thebes. And so anyways, what happens is Iasion, he sees Demeter, and he lusts after Demeter at this wedding. That all goes down, and then Zeus sees the end result, and he kills Iasion right on the spot. All right, it's a really, really sad thing. But Demeter actually, in some stories, saves Iasion's soul and makes him a upholder of the Samothracian mysteries. And this place right here on this island, I didn't talk to you about it yesterday because everything was flying in my mind. It has some of the most significant archaeological findings about Greek thoughts of death and resurrection. And that guy, Iasion, he also embodies that because he died and was raised again by the same goddess, Demeter, the same goddess who started the Eleusinian mystery. So it's pretty interesting there. All right. Now, Dardanus, though, he grieves so heavily that he leaves Samothrace. He can't even live there anymore. The way it goes is he sees his brother in everything. He's so brokenhearted by what happened that he flees to the shores of what back then was called Mysia. And y'all can see there that there are some words that we've already learned. And yesterday, the two that I was teaching you guys about are these two rivers that surround what will eventually be Troy. But this whole land that goes up onto this plateau is back then it was called Phrygia, Phrygia, Phrygia. And Samoas and Scamander kind of fuel that and feed that with a lot of life, and there are a lot of mountains around that area. And he meets a guy, Dardanus meets a guy named Teucer there, who is kind of just the king of a very gentle tribe, and he shows him Xenia when he gets there, when Dardanus gets there. And he actually not only gives him shelter, but he actually donates a pretty significant amount of land to Dardanus. Yeah.
Yesterday you said he was the king of the general area, so he's actually just the king of a tribe.
Yeah, this is not a super developed area.
Okay.
Yeah, he was just the head guy there at the time. But yeah, there was no big city there. But the people who ended up following Dardanus and that kind of were given to him by Teucer, they eventually were called the Dardanians. And then Dardanus had a young son named Tros. And Tros then became the namesake for what would become the capital city. But he didn't establish it either. He was just a normal kind of up-and-coming king. It was Ilas, his son. So it goes Dardanus to Tros to Ilas. And the reason why I'm emphasizing that is because a lot of the time as you guys are reading the Iliad, you're going to see a lot of these names. The Dardanians, the Teucrians, the Ilians, and the Trojans. You're going to see all those names. And so Ilas, he was wandering around one day with all of his men, and he bumped into another kind of little city-state kind of thing, kind of a little village, and they were having a competition. They were having a bunch of contests, and the king saw Ilas and said, "Hey, are you the leader of all these men?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "Well, we'd love to have you join our contest. If you win, we'll give you 50 youth and 50 maidens." So it's a pretty massive gift. And the reward is eventually given to Ilas when he wins. And there was an oracle that was spoken into this whole contest thing, because remember, everything back then had some sort of ritual tied to it. And an oracle spoke and said, "Give them also a heifer, And wherever that heifer laid down, that's where their sacred land is going to be. And so that eventually becomes the land of Pergamum. He names it Pergamum when he gets there, and the heifer lies down, and they sacrifice the heifer. And then he shows his piety by praying his hands up to the Lord, basically saying, what do you want me to do with this? I didn't know that this was going to happen. I didn't know that I was going to be blessed with all this reward. I don't know what it is. And what's really cool about Ilos is that he doesn't basically say, I did this. He looks at all the things that have happened to him in this land so far, from the contest to the reward to the oracle and the gift of the heifer's guidance of where they should go. And he says, thank you. And he says that to the gods. And so the gods send down something that's holding a spear and a spindle. It's this massive sort of column. Do y'all remember what that was called yesterday? It had a funky name.
Oh, it was like Paladonian.
Yeah, very good. It has a name, the Palladium. And so this is a picture of Ilos receiving the Palladium with Athena. All right, this like goddess figure. And it's kind of a weird story, but basically what happened was Athena had a best friend named Pallas. They were born almost on the exact same day. Athena was born of Zeus, and Pallas was born of Triton, another god of the sea. And they were really, really close with one another. And they were having a contest one day, and something went wrong in the contest, where all of a sudden their like vicious sort of energy took over, and Pallas had a spear ready to kill Athena. And Zeus saw it from far away, and he jumped in and he put something over Athena, like right at the very last second. She's about to die, his daughter's about to die, and it's a goat skin. And it's from a magical creature called the Aegis, Aegis. And he throws it onto her. It saves her. She doesn't realize that she's been saved like that. And then she turns around and in her own frenzy, she kills Pallas. They were just having like a playful fight, but immediately she's just grief-stricken. She can't believe that this has happened. And so what she does is she takes the Aegis and she says that she's going to wear it forever, but she's going to cut a piece of it off and she's going to make a resemblance of Pallas, and she's going to put a piece of that on Pallas forever as well. And Pallas is going to hold a spear and she's going to hold a spindle. And she eventually, Athena, renames herself Pallas Athena. So she keeps her friend's name with her forever. And so sometimes you will see Athena referenced as Pallas. And she's wearing this Aegis as a way to remember it. And so is this Palladium. This Palladium has that Aegis on it. So that's that whole story there. And it represents for Ilos, the fact that they gave it to Ilos. It came down in this beam of light, represented, we understand your struggle. We want to be a part of your struggles. That's what this Palladium represents. It's like one of the most important pieces of memorabilia for Athena and Zeus, how they became so close. It also resembles how Athena herself is a vicious leader, but she's one who cares for the people that she chooses to care for. And it's this whole idea of union and protection. I'm with you. I want to know you. I want to know you in your struggles, all that kind of stuff. And also, we're here to give you absolute protection because that's what the Aegis represents. Anybody who wears the Aegis cannot be hurt. That's the whole thing. So this is a huge gift. And what's crazy is he looks directly at it and he's blinded. He can't see it. His eyes just stop working completely. And he just knows that this is of the gods. And so he starts to pray. And eventually he continues on praying and praying and praying until the gods basically say, we've taken your sight away so that you can truly see within how much we are blessing your city, how much you're not doing it, how much we are blessing your city. And that's why I have right here, wait for Aeneas. Because the story of Aeneas is going to take this whole concept of how the gods brought up Troy in its very beginnings and how they're also going to be there in the end. Then one of Ilos's sons, it was this dude named Laomedon, and he was just awful, man. There were just all these times that he would basically set people up to do something for him, and he would promise a reward, and then he would just renege on it. All right, so there are two things that we're going to talk about in that end. The first one is this one, between Apollo and Poseidon. They had just recently rebelled against Zeus. It happens sometimes in the Olympian storyline where the gods just get really sick and tired of obeying Zeus, and so they just decide to try and take the throne from him, and it never works. And so Apollo and Poseidon are banished for a year. All right, they're banished from heaven for a year, and they're cast down as though they're just men. And the curse that they're supposed to live up to here is actually just manual labor. They have to live up to hard work. And they do that a lot until one day they wander around what's eventually going to be Troy, and they end up saying, hey, we need some manual labor. Is there anything that you guys are working on? And Laomedon says, yeah, we're actually trying to build our walls right now. We're trying to establish our shepherding community. And so they're like, well, we can do that. Poseidon helps build the walls himself, and Apollo takes care of the shepherding community. One of the things I told you guys about yesterday was that it wasn't just the city being built. It was the presence of the gods everywhere. So that same thing, the Palladium is there, and it's constantly like bringing this influx of blessing towards Troy, and Troy is just constantly blessed, even by the gods' direct hands, both the city and the countryside. But they're done. They finished within a year. And the walls are the most incredible. They're called the Scaean Gates. They're the most incredible walls the ancient world has ever seen. Impenetrable. Kind of like the Aegis itself that's treasured inside. Absolutely impenetrable. And the countryside is extremely blessed. We have a lot of shepherds around taking care of the land and the animals of the land. But Laomedon does not give them what he said he would, the pay that they were deserved for their manual labor. All right? And it was a pretty awful thing to do, because that right there, Zeus saw, Athena saw, and of course Apollo and Poseidon were the direct recipients of that broken Xenia. The guest-host relationship was completely fractured, for sure. And so what happens is the presence of God is just completely taken away from the city. All right? And that's a pretty significant thing. We could talk about that for a while. But how many times when you read Israel, you talk about like how there's leaders who come in who call on the Lord's name. They recognize the Lord's doing and all of the battles or all of the plagues and famines that the Lord comes in and saves them from. And then maybe they themselves, or maybe the next in line, just decides that, no, it was us. And then they forget where all the blessing came from. And right then and there is when the presence of God leaves them and allows them to be taken over. So it's that same theme. And guys, what's crazy is that this was happening around the same time as all of that. All right, so this whole idea of having the presence of God in our cities as our cities are being founded is a pretty significant one, especially as it is about to lead into the most important story in the ancient world. So not only did Laomedon hurt Poseidon and hurt Apollo and then leave Troy out to dry with no presence of the divine within the city or without, they also take his sister. All right, they take his daughter, Hesione. It's his daughter. And they basically say, if you don't let us sacrifice her, this innocent woman, if you don't let us sacrifice her to this huge beast of evil, then we are going to come in and we're going to destroy your city. You won't just be without us and without our protection. We are going to destroy your city. And so they go ahead, and Laomedon basically says, all right, sounds good. So he takes his daughter out, strips her completely bare, ties her to a rock on the ocean side, and this huge chthonic kraken-like creature is threatening in this huge tidal wave to come and eat her. All right, it's called the Cetus, C-E-T-U-S. And it pulls right up to the shore with her completely exposed. Nothing is going to save her. Except by chance, Hercules happened to be passing by with a few of his friends. And so he looks over to Hesione and he basically says, I'm going to save you, but I want something in return. Do y'all remember what the reward was? And especially where we are, why this is important? Horses. Yeah, the reward. He says, I want the horses that Zeus gave to you guys, the Trojans, because of yada yada. That's a long story. But I want some of those horses. And Hesione says, yes, please, 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 please. And he fights this beast for 3 days. And the cool thing about it is that he intervenes for this like perfect beast of evil that nobody else has ever defeated before. He intervenes and he dives into the belly of this beast. And he fights it for 3 days. And he's completely consumed by this beast from the inside for 3 days. Until he eventually is born again out of this. And he has no hair. So he's like this completely bare, huge, muscly baby boy. All right? And it's a really cool image, man. I love it so much. And that's what happens. So what happens then is that Hercules, he goes to Laomedon. And Laomedon had also agreed to give him these horses. But he goes right into his palace chamber, and he says, all right, man, I saved your daughter, and I slayed the beast. All right, where are my horses? And Laomedon says, I'm not giving you any freaking horses. So this is Laomedon's move. Okay, he gets people, miraculous, demigod, God people to do stuff for him, and he does not pay them their due. And so what Hercules does is he says, all right, I saved Hesione. I get to keep her. And he just leaves with Hesione. Not only does he threaten to leave Troy completely destroyed, he says, you know what? I'm not going to destroy Troy, Laomedon. I'm just going to kill you. So he kills Laomedon right on the spot. All right, I didn't go into all this yesterday, but he kills Laomedon, and he leaves Troy without a king. Hesione talks to him and says, please don't do this to my people. And so what Hercules does, this kind of like judge figure who like does things to save the people, but also knocks out the evil that's there at the head of the snake. He basically says, who do you want me to ransom? And she says, please save my little brother, Podarches. So this is wild. Please hold on to the symbolism of this part. I didn't get into it yesterday like I should have, but please catch what I'm saying. Who do you want me to ransom? Who do you want me to keep alive as long as I have you? You are my connection to the righteousness that could maybe still be here in Troy, regardless of how evil the king was last. She says, please save Podarches. All right, and this is where we get this whole thing where Hesione is then given to Hercules' friend Telamon. You don't need to know a whole lot of that, but she's not given to Hercules. Hercules gives her to Telamon, and instead, Hercules saves Podarches. All right, he gives the ransom veil back to Hesione, says, you're free. Now Priam is the one that I am deeming to be the righteousness here. It's a weird, complex kind of thing. I'm not explaining it super well, but basically all that's really happening here is that he's saying, does Troy need to be destroyed completely based on its leadership? Hesione says, no, there is goodness still in the bloodline of the kings. Save Podarches. So Podarches is given this chance to be the new head of Troy, and Hercules is the judge of that. But Hesione is taken away from Troy. All right? So she is the ransom. Yeah.
Who is Priam and who is...
This is what I'm about to say. So Podarches' name at that moment, because she is taken as a ransom for him to live and be righteousness. Are y'all seeing this? She is taken away forever from her kingdom. And he is then, the ransom veil is given back. He is then the thing that has been bought by that ransom veil. And so his name changes from Podarches to Priam, which, guys, that comes from the Greek word meaning to buy. So Priam has been bought, and he is the new king of Troy now. So that's a pretty significant image here. All right? Somebody who was going to die. All the bloodline of Laomedon was going to die because Laomedon failed as a leader, as an authority figure. He had fallen from the grace of the gods completely. And so Hercules stepped in as this half-man, half-god judge and said, should I wipe everything out? And then Hesione asked him to have mercy on Priam. So Priam was bought with a price, but now he's the king. All right, and so he ends up having some kids, but this is the next little thing I want to go ahead and put. They didn't for a long time forget about Hesione. They wanted Hesione back. So Priam sent out this initial embassy to go and get Hesione, and then I'm going to talk about the next one in a little bit. Antenor and Anchises, these are two names y'all need to know. Antenor and Anchises were sent out by Priam to go and get his sister back. They couldn't find her. So they had to come back empty-handed. And then what we're going to talk about in a little bit is this one. Paris and Aeneas also go and bring her back many years later. They also go, all right? But we got some details we got to cover first, and that's where I got to yesterday. All right? All right? Sorry, I went too fast. Does anybody have any questions about this?
Just trying to figure out I'm up there until you get to Antenor and the Anchises.
Anchises?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he sent Priam sent those two.
He sent those two.
Find Hesione.
Yep, they failed. They couldn't find her because they thought that she was with Hercules, but Hercules had given her to Telamon.
Right.
So they didn't know who had her. They had no idea where she was. And so many years later, many years later, he tries to do another embassy. And that's what we're going to talk about in just a little bit. He tries to send another embassy, but it has Paris and Aeneas in it. And those two names are going to become incredibly significant. But for right now, you guys actually don't know anything about Paris except for what I told you yesterday. Priam, when he becomes king, he's married to a bunch of people. Remember, I talked to y'all about that. A signal of someone's power is how many children they have and how many wives that they have to have those children. All right? Talking about Solomon, the greatest king to ever live. He's like on record from so many sources. Solomon was the wealthiest king to ever live. The wealthiest king to ever live. And it's because of how many connections he had to so many different places through his wives. Same thing with Priam. He had so many children. So many. He had upwards of 70 children. All right? But then he became married to another woman named Hecuba. And she has a very significant child. And it's her firstborn. And his name is Hector. All right? Hector's going to become one of the, if not the major player in the Iliad. All right? So he is basically going to become the protector of Troy. All right? But she starts to have these nightmares. Do y'all remember me telling you about this yesterday? Hecuba starts to have these nightmares that she keeps on giving birth to this like flame, this torch, and it keeps lighting fire to everything and everyone in Troy. And so she goes and she asks the priests of Troy, and she says, please explain my dream. And they basically say, you are pregnant. She's like, what? You're pregnant, and your offspring is going to bring down all of this kingdom. Brick by brick, stone by stone, your offspring is going to be the end of this kingdom. Now, y'all can take that surface level, like I say so much, y'all can take that surface level with just this story. But please hear me when I say that is the most significant theme of any story ever told.
It happened in the Bible, right?
Yes, it happens in everything. Remember I gave you all that like PowerPoint of like 50 different examples of how having this child born or having this child live means the end of what other generations have had before?
Literally the Lion King.
It's everything, dude. I'm telling you, it is the theme. And it is the theme of the Bible. It's who Jesus is. And he says that himself. He says, I mean, they're like next to the temple, like in Jerusalem at one point. And he says, I'm going to tell you right now, in 3 days, I'm going to rip that thing down. Brick by brick and stone by stone. So this is essential to you understanding that Paris is a very important figure. And that's what I talked to you all about yesterday, is how this guy, this thing that, this flame, this torch, they try to kill. They try to abort the baby. All right? They send a hunter to go out and do this. His name is Agelaus. And Agelaus sets him out there for 8 days. He comes back and the baby's still alive. Because it's been nurtured by animals, namely a bear. A bear has been raising these things to life, and it's Paris. This little baby is Paris. Now, he's raised by shepherds, and the shepherds do not tell him who he is. But he's raised in such a way that everybody knows that he's strong, everybody knows that he's beautiful, and that he's trustworthy. What he becomes for the shepherds is not just one of them. He becomes the guy who protects the shepherds. So these people are nurturing and nurtured by nature, and he makes sure that that unity, that connection with nature stays strong. It's like one of my favorite connections of any... Guys, this is why the name Foster, my son's name, is so dope to me. There are so many characters like this when things are going well. There are so many characters like this who are not just connected to nature, but they seem to be like this priestly center between human life and natural life. And they make sure that the unity there is clean and strong. And Foster's name means steward of the woods. So it's just a really, really cool thing that I love. And Paris represents that. And I just want to go ahead and say this really quick. The majority of representations of Paris are awful. They make him out to be like this weak little wimpy little beep, 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 boop. He's not, dude. This guy is incredible. He just carries this pretty awful prophecy with him about the destruction of everything. All right? And he's given this nickname Alexander, which literally means helper of men. All right, so this is a really incredible title that he's given. Alexander means helper of men. And he shows himself to be strong in a lot of contests. He also shows himself to be an incredibly fair judge. Remember the story I told you about yesterday? He had like a favorite pet bull. Do y'all remember that? He loved his bull. He would take his bull to like bullfighting contests, and his bull would always win. But there was one time that Ares brought his bowl of heaven down. Do y'all remember this little story I told you?
Yeah, you told
He
me.
brought his heaven down, his bowl of heaven down, and they fought, and he won. And he even like tried to rub it in Paris's face, but Paris was like a total G about it and was like, man, great job. You are the winner. And he like took the crown off of his own head, put it onto Ares' head, and everybody knew that he was a fair judge from that point on. And then one day, all of a sudden, he's just sitting in a field. Y'all remember this? The earth starts to tremble. He looks up to the sky, and all of a sudden, the most beautiful things he's ever seen in his entire life are coming down, showing off their glory to him as much as they can without roasting him alive. All right? And that's the reason we had to go back into this, is because in the meantime, with all of that prophecy going on about the Trojan offspring that's going to be the downfall of all of Troy, we have now the exact same theme going on in heaven. So we have the Trojan offspring of Priam, the king of Troy, receives a prophecy that his offspring, with Hecuba, will destroy Troy. That's the prophecy on earth. In the meantime, there has been the exact same prophecy in heaven, saying Thetis, this woman, will give birth to a boy that will be far stronger than its father. Same sort of theme, just different words in the prophecy. And Zeus lusts after Thetis. Apparently Thetis had like the hottest ankles in the world. All right? Apparently her ankles were just like, that's like her epithet. It's like nice ankled Thetis or something like that. Like, yeah, I don't know. But she was apparently really good looking. All right? And so Zeus is like overcome with this fire. But he does something really awful. Do y'all remember what I told you he did?
He possesses a guy.
He possesses a guy to go and impregnate Thetis before he can. So Thetis was a maiden up to that point. She just has this prophecy on her basically saying, your offspring, no matter who the dad is, will be far greater than the dad. And Zeus is like right there at that point where he's going to be the dad of Thetis' first kid. But then he possesses a man named Peleus to go and basically do it for him. All right? He tries to make up for it by doing what? Y'all remember this from yesterday? Throwing literally the most bomb wedding of all time. All right? And everybody knows why this wedding is taking place. But Zeus just has this whole idea of like, be happy. Come on. I want it to be perfect. Come on. Everybody bring amazing gifts. Come on. Definitely do not let the goddess of discord at this wedding. Do y'all remember me talking about this? Do not let her come to this wedding. Her name is Discordia. When she does what the goddess of discord does, she takes an apple, perfectly beautiful golden apple of Hesperia. She writes the word Calliste on it, which means for the fairest. And she throws it into the middle. And the three goddesses, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, all go for it at the same time. And that's why they showed up at Paris's shepherding field, proclaiming as much glory as they possibly could. All right? And so what happens here is Hera offers the richest realm in all the world. Athena offers utmost wisdom and strength, masculinity and strategy. But Aphrodite offers the most beautiful woman in all of existence. And he chooses Aphrodite. Aphrodite goes away extremely happy. Hera and Athena go away with the utmost hatred for Troy. Cannot explain that enough. Hera and Athena go away with the utmost hatred of Troy. All right. That's these two. I just like these pictures. They're fun. All right. So what happens then? Paris just kind of goes off on his own. He just kind of is just like, oh man, I can't wait for the hottest woman, to come to me one day. Aphrodite didn't give me the fine print of like when this is going to take place. I don't know what I just signed up for. When am I going to get this wife? When am I going to get this beautiful woman? And eventually he starts to like feel this weird tugging to go to the city. All right? The way that we can understand it, the way that I'll just explain it to you guys now is destiny's calling him into something. He's never felt this draw before. He's been fine just being the shepherd of the shepherds. But he starts to feel this draw back towards the city. And then the same sort of thing occurs. We've had the same theme over and over and over again. We have contest, xenia of some kind. And then we have oracles and prophecies. All right? We just have the same theme over and over. All right? He's lured back home to Troy. He doesn't even know that he's a prince of Troy. He's just lured to Troy. All right? And there once again is a contest going on there. And he's like, hey, do you mind if I hop in? And he does. And he starts to beat his own family members, his own brothers. They do not recognize him. They actually get so angry because nobody has ever been able to beat them in these kind of contests. So that same thing of, we have people who are beaten in certain areas and in certain contests. Like, for example, the number one that we just had is the Caledonian boar hunt. Everybody wanted to win. Everybody wanted to get the kill of the boar. But it was a woman who eventually got the credit. And you remember what everybody tried to do to her? Kill her. And it was actually Meleager's own uncles who tried to kill her. And what did he do? He killed his own uncles to protect her. So there are these scenarios a lot of the time. Another one would be when Perseus came in to marry. Do y'all remember this? Perseus came in to marry somebody, and everybody tried to take over, and he had to fight them off. So we have stories like that. But remember, it was what marked Paris as a fair judge when he was beaten in the contest, where he went up and he actually embraced the man who defeated him. So Paris is really unique in that. He wins here, and his brothers show themselves to be pretty base. They immediately try to kill him. They do not give him his reward. All right? So his brothers chase him into after he wins, his brothers chase him into the temple of Zeus. And he clings onto the altar, praying to Zeus, because he's about to die. But then his sister, and her name is Cassandra, and I'm not going to go into this story, but she was basically cursed with the gift of prophecy. But Cassandra's disease within that curse, her broken part of that, is that no one will ever believe your prophecies. So you'll have perfect foresight, but no one will believe you, ever. All right, it's awful. She lives a terrible life. All right, really, really not cool. So anyways, she does, however, this woman does identify, that's my brother. And for some reason, they believe her. It's one of the only times that people actually trust her. But then here's what's wild. In that moment that they do trust her, there's still a monkey's ball with it. Do y'all remember what the seer has said about Paris? Yeah. So they all of a sudden get so elated. They're like, this is our long-lost brother. All right? They get so excited. Priam actually starts to feel just like, oh my gosh, another son. This is incredible. He's amazing. He even defeated all my other sons. And so what he does is he basically forgets. What does he forget? He forgets the prophecy that was about this child. This child will rip every single stone down and will light everything on fire. It will not exist anymore. All right? So what happens now is where we get really what everybody thinks is the very beginning of Troy. But y'all know now that it was a long story before that. So the rape of Helen actually goes all the way back to Hesiona. It's these conquests to try and find Hesiona, to go and find his sister, that actually took Paris out as a Trojan to go and find Helen. So I'm just going to go through it really quickly with y'all. All right. Helenus has a prophecy that basically says, if we keep hunting for Hesiona, I can feel it. Something's going to go really wrong if we keep sending out embassies to go and find your sister, Priam, my aunt. If we go out and do this more and more, Helenus is one of Priam's sons, by the way. If we do this more and more, we're going to get in trouble. We're going to poke something that we shouldn't poke. All right? They make fun of him, and they basically, this section of the story is called the charge of cowardice. They charge Helenus with cowardice. So I just want to point out something really quick right here. This is such a significant moment in all stories, is when someone has clarity on something, pretty deep clarity on something, and in order for people to actually not follow that clarity, but to follow their own vision for things, they mock them. Okay, so just get ready for that, and not just these stories that we're doing in here, but in a lot of the other ones. So they have a council. They meet together, and that's this picture right here. They have this council of all the Trojans deciding on what they should do. What should we do? Should we continue to go and look for Hesiona? If we do, what should that look like? And then we have another prophecy, and this is from an old man. The old man says, Laomedon's bloodline, there's something about it, it's dangerous. Everything that this bloodline touches, because of what he did, the curse that he received, everything that Laomedon's bloodline touches is going to cause destruction. Once again, nobody listens. Nobody wants to hear that. They have a victorious goal in their mind. They have an end that they want to achieve, and that's just what they do. And the old man, once again, this somebody who has wisdom and clarity, he's ignored. This prophecy is pushed to the side. The words that have been given to them about what they should think about the future are pushed aside. They want to have a narrow lens. This is a really, really, really significant theme in all storytelling. So the embassy is sent. All right, I'm not going to go into the fancy details about who is with what, but the only one I really want to talk about is that the very first stop that the Trojans make on their embassy, Paris is there on this envoy, even though the old man said a descendant of Priam should not go on this. Paris goes. And he goes to Sparta. Guess who's in Sparta? Helen. Tyndareus, y'all need to write this down. Tyndareus is her dad. He's the king of Sparta. All right, so they go to Sparta. Tyndareus is still the ruler. And ever since Helen was born, no joke, when she was an infant, she was so beautiful that people had been trying to steal her. Forever. So, Tyndareus, when you have a princess, guys, you got to be really careful, especially when you have one as amazing and beautiful as Helen. You got to be really careful because, guys, you have to choose who she marries. Guess what you're going to do when you choose someone? Make an alliance with them, and then everyone else is going to hate you. And they're going to try and do what? Because they've been doing it since she was a baby. Take her. So this is his dilemma. The king of Sparta, Tyndareus. His dilemma is that, how am I going to make everybody happy with who I give Helen to? All right? Too many city-states to keep up with. There are hundreds and hundreds. All of them know about Helen. All of them would like for their princess to marry her.
Upper school students and teachers, when the bell rings, all middle and upper school students will be going to advisory groups. Again, even if you have pictures, you will go to your advisory group first. So when the bell rings, all students will be going to advisory groups.
All right, y'all. I'll see you later.